Hello everyone, this is Professor Dr. Lau Yiling from Department of Parasitology, University of Malaya. Today our lecture is on scientific writing skills. A scientific paper usually divided into a few sessions: abstract, which summarizes what did you do in a nutshell; introductions, which introduce the problem of the studies, what you have been studying on; material and methods, of course, include all the methods or material that you use to solve the problems; result include what you have found out; discussions, to discuss what does it means, what does your result means; and acknowledgements, to acknowledge those who help you out in the research; references, whose work did I refer to; and appendices, which all the extra informations. So now you are ready to start writings. You need to formulate the questions first, precisely. Think about what kind of questions that you would like to answer. And after you have some questions, you have to decide what to leave out. Okay, you cannot solve too many problems at one time. So pick the important ones. And then you formulate the answer to the questions. A very well written scientific papers would answer these four questions. Why did you start? Means the problem statements of your studies. And what did you do to answer the questions? And what answer did you get? This should be your results. And what does it mean? This will be included in the discussions. The title is the first thing that captures the readers. So it has a very huge functions to whether it will interest the reader to continue reading your papers. Some authors prefer to write the title at the beginnings so that the title can guide them throughout the whole writings. Some authors prefer to write the title at the end of it so that they know the big idea of what to write in the titles. So a title plays important functions to interest the readers, of course, and to inform the readers what is the research about. So it is very informative if you have a very nice title written. So how to write a good research title? Simplicity and the use of concise statements when formulating your title is very important. Avoid words that carry little or no meaning at all, so that the title can be as simple as possible. So usually title is less than 12 words, and after you finish writing the whole paper, revisit your title again. Try to simplify it accordingly. Avoid using acronyms in the titles, and sometimes you can also use some humor or irony statements that can attract attention of the readers. Once the title is formulated, you should ask yourself 4 questions. Is it correct? Is it clear enough? Or is it complete? Can the title represent the whole manuscript? And of course, is it concise? Then the next thing come following the title is the author list, usually, if you read a scientific papers. So here a question to be asked is, who qualifies for authorships? So not everyone that have some little contribution to your paper deserve the authorships. So you do need to sit down and discuss with your supervisors of who to include in the authors. So author should be anyone who had an important role requiring creativity, professional judgments, or both, to the following: the conceptions and design or the collections of data, or analyze and interpret the studies. And also at the same time, they're involved in drafting and revising the manuscript critically and approving the final version for publications. So it is crucial, once you have finish writing the paper, to send the paper to all the authors listed in the author list for their comments and revisions, and all the authors should approve the final versions of the paper for publications. Next is the abstracts. Abstract is the summary of what the whole paper is about. It is part of the papers which help the readers to decide whether to read the full articles. So abstract is very important to attract the readers to continue reading your papers. And very often nowadays, abstract would not come together with the full papers. In the publisher websites or in the PubMeds, the abstracts is only shown, the paper will be only shown as abstracts. So some of the publishers requires the readers to purchase the full manuscript. Some it can be freely available. It depends on the publishers. So in order to increase the view of the readers, more views to your papers, writing a concise and nice abstract can serve the purpose. So it will help the reader to decide whether to obtain the full articles. Of course, the abstract that we mentioned here is on scientific writing, is not an art piece as shown in these pictures. So an abstract is a summary to use to attract readers to an article and to get a piece of research accepted for conference presentations. Other than titles, it is the part of an article that is looked at by most of the people. Since abstract is always freely available, so it is also free for everyone. So it is a part of the paper that most viewed by most people. So after you have written the abstract, these are the questions that you should ask. Have the 4 basic questions been answered? The 4 questions in the earlier slides. So is the abstract correctly written? And it is clear for the readers. The structure of the abstract usually include a bits of each sections of the papers, because it is summarized of your papers, and it will include the objective, the basic design, which include the simple statement about the methodology used, settings, where is the research conducted, patients and participants, how many numbers, how is the sample collected, interventions used, and also the results. At the end, it will come with a conclusions. Then you can start writing your papers. So in the paper writings, it is actually looks like a time glass structures. The introductions usually start with general statements, and then it zoom down to the aims, and it will be followed by methods and then results, and the discussion will be focusing on your results and then expanding out to the general informations where you compare with other studies and you make your conclusions. So in the introductions, you go from the broad context of your work, tell the readers what is already known and what else is not known, and what the problem that you're trying to solve and what you decide to do. A good introductions can attract the interest of the readers. It will also describe all the keywords in your titles. So after you have written your titles, just break out into keywords that is important for your studies, and you describe them in the introductions. And it has a balanced reviews about all the aspects that you include. And of course, always make sure you have recent references. You do not want to cite all the old studies and miss out the recent one. So just try to balance it out. A good introductions will define what is the questions or the problem is. And then they will generate the hypothesis. And from there, the paper will clearly state out the objective or the aim of the studies. The example given here, you can read out after this. There are 3 questions that you need to answer in introductions. So first, what is already known? Does your introduction give enough background of the subjects? So highlight the importance of the topics and make some general statements to begin with, and present an overview of the current research on the subject that you are studying. Question 2 is, ask what is not known. After you have mentioned all the known factors, so what else is not known? Those are the things that you're trying to solve in your papers. So you need to identify what is the problem, what is the problem statement. So usually the problem is actually revealing a gaps in the existing research. So sometimes it will be opposed to an existing assumptions. That's why you need to do research on. And you need to formulate the questions or the problems that you're trying to answer in this part of the writing. Third question is, what did you do? So in the introduction, you also need to describe how you plan to address the problems. So state the intent of your study, outline the key characteristic of your study, and you can also add 1 or 2 lines about your important results. Then come to material and methods. This part here serves as the functions to provide information that can allow others in the field to repeat your work. So you need to provide more detailed information about your work so that other researchers who are interested in repeating your experiment can refer to your paper and repeat it accordingly. So this is also where the readers can assess the validity of your work. So you have to provide all information that you use towards the studies so that the reader know exactly what you have done and the reader is convinced that your work is done properly. So in this, there are 3 questions that you need to answer as well. Does every results have a methods? So it's important after you finish writing your result sections later, you refer back to the methods to see whether any methods that you have missed out. Is the sequence of the paragraph logical? So usually methodologies is following what you have done in the lab step by step. You describe the earlier part first, continuing with what you have done subsequently. Then sometimes you can provide subheadings to the methods. Actually, most of the time you have subheadings to each of the method used, and you have to revise again whether the subheadings are appropriate. So then you continue with writing your results. So result is where you report the findings of your study. And this part here need to tally with the methodologies. So the method that you use, what kind of result is found. So follow the steps of the methods. Sometimes result can be written together with discussions, depends on the journal that you're submitting your paper to. And most of the time, the result is separated from the discussions. So the principle is show your finding of the research in an orderly manner, logical sequence. And sometimes you can use illustrative materials, tables to help to write these sections. And you have to be very objective in writing your results. So how you write it in a clear, orderly manners? Usually you start with writing subheadings or subsections and follow the sequence of the methodologies or your hypothesis, and each section will tell the purpose of the experiment or the approach. So this is the examples of how you make your result tally with your methods. Try to follow as close as possible what you have mentioned in the methods. And how you're using the illustrative materials or text to report your findings. You can present your data in a visual ways using tables, figures, or formulas, video, or even audio. Okay, whichever way they can convey your message more correctly. And remember, you do not draw the results, you write about the result. So you always use text to describe your results supported by graphics. You cannot just have figures or tables without any text. So if you have to use figures, you have to describe what is the figures about. And similarly with tables. And then make sure all the table and figures that you use are cited in the text. Do not miss out any of it. So you need to be objective. Highlight the observation that are very relevant to your investigations objectively. Let the data speak for itself. You just need to guide the reader to what was observed. So you do not, at this part of your writing, try to be objective. You do not interpret the result at this part of the writings. You just report the data correctly and highlight the trends and differences and correlations between the data sets. So this is one of the example. You also should avoid discussing or interpret your result at this point, because at result session you just report your result, you do not interpret it. So interpretation should come under discussions. And try to avoid normalizations. In this case means try to avoid very wordy or cloudiness of the reporting styles. So I'm giving you example here. For example, you try not to use too complicated words as such. We should take into consideration several factors. Or he must make a decision about what to do, or they give us information about the new research programs. Instead of using words like this, you can make it simple by saying, we should consider several factors. Just to consider several factors is enough. No need to write take into considerations. And you can write, he must decide, okay, on what to do, or that inform us about the new research programs. So by simplifying the words, it makes the statement clearer as well. Another example is the analysis of how X factor impacts P gene expressions was conducted. It will be much simpler if you use the active form. We analyze X factors impact on B gene expressions. So by simplifying it, it's actually make the reader understand your statement better. Avoid also reporting background information or attempting to explain your findings at this point. Do not do any explanation at this point, because explaining your findings should be in the discussion. Reporting on background information should be in your introductions. Alright, so do not mix all these sessions up and confuse the readers. And many of the researchers always afraid of telling negative results. Actually, we can report negative result because negative result is also a result. So if your experiment show that it is negative, it doesn't mean that it is wrong. So negative result can also help the future researcher to understand that there's something not possible to be done, and when they are trying to repeat it and they get negative result, they won't get frustrated by doing that. So document them, and it may provide you with the opportunity to write a more engaging discussion session later. Also, do not include too many raw data in your result sessions. Raw data can be included in the appendix or in the paper as a supplementary files. Okay, so all these very lengthy raw data can be excluded from the main text. For example, the transcript from the interviews or huge database of sequences, images of microscopy images, all these can be excluded in the main text. So as I mentioned earlier, you can use tables or figures to help writing your results. It is important for presentations of quantitative data to show it in a more informative way. And for small and isolated data, you can actually describe in the text. You do not need to form tables or figures. So you can combine whatever data is relevant into a figures, just make them simples, or in a tables and combine a few data into a simpler form. In the next few slides, I will be showing you a few examples of tables and figures that you can utilize to interpret or summarize your results. I will not give too much emphasis in these sessions because it will be covered in another lectures. So in this table 1 showing here, I'm just wanted to let you know in the tables, usually we will include the more important data that you want to show on the left hand side of the tables. So in these examples is this data here is trying to compare the prison populations by gender, male and females are the important factors here. What they want to show is the male has higher population compared to females. But the same results can be interpreted in another way. The same data, when you want to compare it differently, in this case by year, then the year is actually situated on the left hand side of the tables. So in this case, the authors would like to show the prison populations in year 2007 comparing to 2008. So in this case, 2007 showed much lesser populations compared to 2008. So the emphasis is on year. So year is placed on the left hand side of the tables. There are many ways to tabulate your results. Try to simplify the tables as much as possible. When you have so many data and you try to include everything in the tables, it will make the tables very busy and it looks very complicated, and it takes some time to understand what the tables is trying to tell. So if you have a busy tables as such, try to simplify it. Try to sit down with your supervisor or a group of friends on how to make this much simpler. So the same data can be presented in a different way. So this is what, after trying, the authors simplify the tables and it looks more informative and easier to understand in this way. And then you can also utilize graph. Different graph have different purposes. So this table here summarizes what kind of graph you can use to represent your data or your results. So pie chart, okay, is used for comparison with components. Bar charts, if you have few items to compare. Column line is usually over timing, changes in time in the trends. Frequencies, you can use histograms, and correlations, you can use scatter plot. Here are a few examples. Pie charts to use to compare different components. Bar graph to compare values across categories. Line graph to compare time series. Discussion sessions is written in a reverse styles of introductions. So just now in introductions, you come from the broad base, zoom down to your aims. So in discussions, you come from results, very specific results, and you zoom it out to the more general statement where you compare it with other studies. So from a focus point and you zoom it out to a broad base. So your discussions should include a little bit of your results, summarizing your results, identify the limitations and biases, compare and contrast with other findings. So very important, you have to at this point bring out other studies that is similar to your studies and compare it with other study. Discuss the implications, or positive or negative result. You need to discuss the implications, and then you suggest future research and show how your result fit into a broader fields that you describe at the beginnings of these paper writings, which is in the introductions. So you try to link it back to the broad base of what you're trying to study at the beginnings when you write the introductions. So this is how you can write a nicely tied up discussions when you refer back to your introductions. So in the discussions, you have statement of your principal findings, your more important findings, your strength and weaknesses of the study, and how is this strength and weaknesses related to other studies. So discuss in particular any differences in your result with other studies and the meaning of the studies. Okay, what is the meaning of it? The possible mechanism or implications for the clinician or policy makers, for examples. And you can also list out unanswered questions so that you can propose it for future research. So these are the do and don'ts in the discussion sessions. So discuss conflicts results. Do not afraid of reporting conflicts results. Just need to discuss about it. Provide possible explanation for unexpected or non-significant findings. That I mentioned just now, negative results. Do not worry about it. Just provide explanation about it. Discuss the implication of the study and discuss the limitations of your study and provide some suggestion for future research. What you do not need to do is do not restate the results. Okay, result already provided in the result sessions. You do not need to repeat it. Okay, otherwise it will be very lengthy. And do not report additional finding at these points. Whatever you discuss in the discussions must already be included in your result or methodologies. Okay, if you did not include any methods or any result of particular informations, do not add it on in your discussions. Okay, just discuss whatever reported in your results. Okay, so just make sure that there's no more additional mixing information at this part. And do not report ambiguous data sources as well. So everything must be accurately done and the data must be cited. Use active voice whenever is possible in these sessions. Okay, not passive voice. Watch out for wordy phrases. Actually, throughout your papers, you shouldn't have wordy phrases. Be concise and make your points very clearly. Use the first person is okay, but do not use first person too much, and because it may actually distract the reader from the main point. Okay, just use just a few times, but do not use too often. So now come to the conclusions. Conclusion usually is only a few lines, so it should be as concise as possible and explain exactly how you solve the problem They're highlighted in the introductions. Now you refer back to your introductions. All right. So these are the two examples that you can use. You have to really describe your finding. So don't just say a method for what has been developed in this work. You can actually add in more information by saying the use of which methods increase the accuracy of measurement by 20% compared to the previous study. The proposed method can be more useful and things like that. All right, just give a little bit of explanations. So make sure the conclusions is not the summary of the results. Make sure it is providing some informations in the bigger pictures. So once again, this is how you should write your whole manuscript using these structures. So by using this structure, you can actually make sure the questions at the beginnings has been answered at the end. Then you come to the next session, acknowledgements. This is optional, but most of the time we include it in the paper writings. So acknowledge whoever helped you in designing, carry out the work, or what kind of material you receive from others. So you can acknowledge them as well. So also acknowledge people that help you to read or proofreadings, acknowledge the scholarship, acknowledge the funders, and acknowledgement should be very precise as well. Mentions that the name of the person who helped you to do what, and always brief, not flowery. All right. A statement about conflicts of interest can also be written here, and you also need to acknowledge written permission that you obtain from someone when you use their data or something like that. Citations, references and citations, this will be included in another lectures. I will not further elaborate this. Just for your informations, all journal has their own way of citing papers or references. You have to follow the instruction for authors that is available in the publisher websites. Okay. Well, basically, that is the end for today's lectures. Before I end, I would like to acknowledge Elizabeth Hessetine for sharing her slides with me. Most of the slides that I shown you today are actually from her. Elizabeth has run many workshops on scientific writing, and I attended one of her workshops. She is also a member of some of the scientific journals or associations. Thanks, Elizabeth. And if you have further questions, feel free to contact me. And here is my email address. All the best.